We're here today with Rogayeh Tabrizi, the CEO and founder of Theory+Practice, Vancouver-based startup company on AI. She just returned from the Paris AI Action Summit, and I'm really delighted to be with you this afternoon, Rogayeh, to hear from you about the summit and what your impressions are following your meetings and your visit to Paris.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for coming here, for the invitation from the French government to attend the summit. It was absolutely wonderful to be there. You know, as we were talking, like the atmosphere, the vibe, it was just so incredibly positive. And you know, even when I compared with the AI for Good Summit at the United Nations in Geneva, it really was an incredibly inclusive environment. There was a lot of practitioners, business people, obviously government organizations and representatives of different institutions. I found the entire summit an incredibly good mix, and it was nicely presenting, you know, how there are many different players that actually need to be part of a conversation at the table if you're going to truly pave a path to maximize on the potential of, you know, these technologies.
Everybody talks about AI. We know it's first and front on many of our issues that we're facing, be it on the economic side, climate change, governance. Are there any specific or major takeaways that particularly stand out during the conversation that you've been able to attend, or during also the presentation that you delivered during the summit?
You know what I found really interesting, so you know, as obviously everybody knows, the first day was very much focused on a lot of meetings and conversations, very broad topics, and it was incredible representations from many different governments and many different countries that attended, right? Second day at the F station, there was a lot of business leaders that were there. I spoke as part of the Canadian delegation. We talked about Canadian startups. We talked about, you know, what we are doing here in Canada, and again, it was just fantastic reception. And what that really signaled to me again was there were two major things that stood out for me. One was the actual economic focus that, you know, and frankly positive focus, that, you know, this is an area that we really got to figure out how AI is going to contribute to our societies, to the businesses, to the companies that we're running, etc., etc. So there were a lot of discussions around that. So, you know, there was a lot of conversation about how AI is going to create more jobs as opposed to take away jobs. And these are important topics. These are non-trivial topics, because we know there's going to be a trade-off, and we know we have to think very carefully to create balance inside organizations. You know, there's always the famous saying of, you're not necessarily going to lose your job to AI, but you're going to lose your job to somebody who actually uses AI, right? So, and that's just one level. When it comes to the actual implementation of the technologies that we're talking about in different companies, we still have a non-trivial path ahead of us. And it's not a path that you can just have computer scientists or physicists at it. You really got to bring intellectual diversity to the problem, and that's why the diversity and the inclusion was a big factor for me. So this was all different components that were actually present and really stood out for me. When it came to F Station, it was again very good focus on both a mix of startups, a mix of founders, a mix of investors, and, you know, obviously much more mature companies. And there were a lot of meetings that took place, and it really was buzzing. It was just fantastic in that sense.
If we look at the coming months, there are opportunities for continuing to discuss those topics. Web Summit is coming. Then Vivatech in Paris will take place in June, and Canada is going to be the highlight country. What sort of opportunities for collaboration do you see or that have emerged on the occasion of your visit?
I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. So you see how in Canada we always talk about Canada being a few years behind US, and there was almost this sense that like Europe is behind Canada. I don't necessarily agree with that statement personally, because I think there is a lot of really interesting advancements that are happening in a lot of different countries in Europe, including France. But there was definitely that sense of urgency. So when it comes to, you know, being a Canadian company, mostly focusing in North America, because again, US is a really big market for us. However, I am beyond excited about expansion to Europe, personally, from just where we stand, but I also know it's a sentiment that is actually shared among a lot of us. We see massive opportunity in Europe to both tap into resources that there are. We have a European office, we hire talent from Europe, they're incredible universities, multiple different places. So there's that angle, but there's also a different kind of exchange, because the mentality and the way of thinking that is different in Europe can actually, in my opinion, really benefit Canada and US as well. So whoever is listening and you're planning to come to Web Summit, I highly encourage you guys to come to Web Summit. We Canadians are very nice, and there's going to be a lot of different companies here as well from all over Canada and not just Vancouver. But joke of it aside, I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to have cross-pollination, and not just between US and Canada, but also just a lot of different really interesting work that is happening in Europe as well as in France. And last year I attended Vivatech. It was fantastic experience again. I mean, the magnitude and just what you really experience is incredible. We have, of course, in North America, we have, for example, CES, or we have NRF for in the context of retail. But Vivatech was just such an incredible experience. So I also really encourage Canadian companies to consider attending Vivatech.
Thank you. Now, two milestones for building more connections in the coming months that we're working on, thanks to people like Rogayeh, and we definitely hope to make the most of those important events to bring and build more connection between our two ecosystems. I think there is an obvious connection, and we're definitely very impressed by what is happening here in Vancouver and in Canada in terms of AI. So thanks a lot again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.